It is Monday, September 11th at 4:45, and I'm calling this Human Resources Committee to order with a quorum present in chamber. Number one is approval of the August 8th, 2023 and August 14th, 2023 minutes. They're in your packet. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to accept. Okay, I have motion by Gisselman, second by Herbst. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. The Human Resources Report for August 2023 is in your packet. Any questions? If not, we will put that on file. Okay. Number three, discussion and possible action approving reclassification of the accounting assistant utility to utility revenue analyst.
All right, I think this was a request made by the group in finance. It seems like when I looked at the job description, there's been several additions. The person in this position has taken on a lot more responsibility, and I don't know if Emily or Mary Ann would like to speak to some of that, but when I thought it was appropriate to reclass this position to really reflect more of the current duties that's being done, and also with the name change from just admin assistant 3 to the revenue analyst. So again, I really felt it was appropriate for the added duties on the job description. And again, I'd like to invite either Mary Ann or Emily to speak more to that if they would like.
That's a long ways from the back there. Really want to acknowledge the complexities that this position deals with on a regular basis. Basically runs the entire utility accounts receivable system single-handedly. There's a lot of coordination that goes on between reading of the multiple meter reading software, making sure that all of the communication towers are communicating properly, working with now the new portal that allows people to pay online. There's just a lot, it's really become way more complex than it was, years ago when this position was originally set up as an accounting assistant.
Any questions?
A question. So does this reside within the utility, or does this reside under your?
It resides in finance,
In
but
finance.
it's funded by the utility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? Okay, I have a motion to approve. Second by Herbst. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Discussion and possible action approving the completed compensation study.
Again, I did send the PowerPoint that Gallagher sent. The recommendation was to raise the pay ranges or the pay bands by 3%. Also, there was, I think there was 3 more positions that we had, that I had them weigh in on the reclass, which was the city attorney, the assistant city attorney, and also the city clerk. With those, Gallagher really agreed that they were, that to give you a little bit of history on the assistant city attorney, we had like 4 different recruitments to fill that position since February, since Nate left. Finally, we got someone, and just, in the next few months or in the first of next year, we're probably going to have to fill another one. And then we've got, and I hate to be, but, we have to really be succession planning also for the city attorney. So we really felt that beefing this up now would be a good idea rather than waiting up until time to do this, so that we could have a very smooth recruitment. And also on the city clerk position, this was more as a difficult position because in a lot of municipalities, a city clerk is a department head. whereas it's not here. She's under finance, but the city clerk is given a huge responsibility, and we felt when we deliberated with Gallagher on that, even though that job was not a department head, it really needed to be classed higher than what it was. I know that we always say that we look at the job and not the person, but we do. We have a great city clerk that has never once complained. This was not something that she brought to our attention. This was something that we looked at and just said, this is something that we want to do to show the appreciation. So Gallagher agreed with the assessment, and they actually recommended that. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Questions?
Go
Go ahead.
I guess I'll start. Everybody's looking this direction. With the 3%, I'm guessing that's for non-represented employees?
Right. The three, and then that's going to be within the pay bands. And just to give you an example, pay band 5 is like 91,000 to 137. It would go from like 94,000 to whatever 3% is on that top figure, and then they'll reconfigure all the steps in between to get there. But that's only for non-represented, because the represented ones, they negotiate their own raises or salary.
And then does this include any kind of cost of living increases?
No,
Or-
that would be separate.
That
That
would
would
be
be
separate.
something separate, that's up to the mayor, finance, and just some more, but this is just strictly from a compensation
So
view.
this is just a realignment? then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Gary.
So with regard to the other unions, what kind of increases were they getting with regard to 2023 sort of adjustments, or what are we looking for?
We don't know because they haven't come yet, because we do transit I think in June, and police and fire at the end of next year, so we don't know.
Then let's go with the last go-around with regard to police and fire. What was the percentages that we agreed to at that time?
I wasn't here, but just from looking at it, I think it was around 4%. Matt, do you know? I think it was around 4%.
We dealt with similar issues that I think you're discussing here tonight, which was we needed to be competitive within the marketplace for police officers, but it's not as easy as giving a percentage, because it adjusted things like how long it takes to reach max pay as a union member, as well as each level within the 4 levels that exist for our officers. We're all different, but if you looked at an average, it's going to be between 5 and 6.5%, depending on where you were at.
Well,
Within each of those.
that's sort of what I thought. I remember those kind of percentages, and that was what, a year and a half ago, 2 years maybe,
That was last
Last-
year.
last year. So, I'm having trouble with the 3% because I think we have to be at least comparable, I think, but in the percentages that we're giving with regard to the unions of police and fire and maybe transit, and then our non-unionized staff.
Well,
I see where Gallagher went with it. They're comparing, generally they're saying 2.7 or thereabouts, but I think that we have to look at our own situation and see if 3%, and maybe that's a discussion for this committee, of course, but I sense that is comparing it to the rest of the staff. I feel that that's a little low, but I would like the rest of the committee to weigh in on. But I heard on the news this morning that some of the unions, the national unions, of course, they're 20-30% increases for their bargaining positions right now. I just feel that 3% at this point in time is a little low.
Okay,
Thank you.
well, I want to address some of that. Number one, I know you're talking GM, that's 46%. That's over 3 years. So it comes out to about 10 or 11% per year. The second part of that is keep in mind that if there's a 3% increase, that's going to be within the pay bands. So whatever though, and then if there's also a cost of living, which might be 2 or 3%, okay? Then you've either got a 1.5 or a 3% step. So once those things start compounding, you have to look at, you've hit that 5 or 6% very easily. Because that's what you have to realize with this. Okay, just let me. With the PD, they're really not on a step system. We're on a step system, which means that you have either 3% or 1.5% that's built in every year. If it's 3% if you're not at midpoint, but after midpoint it goes to 1.5%. So keep in mind that whatever the cost of living or whatever raise they get. So just say the 1.5%. If they get the 3%, you're already at somewhere 4.5. Okay, and then you get a cost of living on top of that. So that starts to compound. So just to try to compare apples to apples.
No, I understand that, but whatever the cost of living increase there's going to be this year, and I'm sure that's in finance right now, but that would come anyways. The wage survey that was presented was to deal with the system that we saw that our employees weren't up to par, weren't getting enough with regard to the rest of the world, and I think that we should be really taking a serious look at to make sure that our employees, in fact, are equal to the rest of the world. I'm not sure that
Okay.
3% does it, but that's up to the rest of the committee.
Okay, so do you want to compare that with what they make in California? Because that's a whole different conversation.
No, we live in Wausau, Wisconsin. I realize that.
Again, and that's what they use to base these on. It's just so easy to say, oh, I'm not being paid enough or whatever. But, we have a lot of the starting salaries in this city are right north of $45,000, $50,000. And can you name anywhere else in Wausau or anywhere else pretty much in Wisconsin that you can make $50,000 with a high school diploma right out of school without going to college, no student loans, no anything? Teachers don't even start that much. So that's a question, that I propose to you. How, at some point, and we can't compare to unions because that's not, we don't have to, so we don't. So I'm done, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to note, as my colleague had brought up, I think with auto workers and their current efforts, and I certainly wish them well. I think, we have to see, especially in a state like ours, the distinction between sometimes the private sector and the public sector. And unfortunately, and hopefully this will not always be the case, we happen to live in a state where there were essentially union busting legislation for public employees, and it caused tremendous damage. And hopefully at some point we will not face such unjust legislation. But I think what we've seen is in the private sector, especially certain industries where maybe some wages had not kept up with company profits, very kind of profound steps forward or objectives like that, where I do feel that in Wisconsin, particularly in the public sector, the challenges have been different for unions, especially public sector unions, and that's namely been through, unfortunately, union busting legislation at the state level. Thank you.
I guess my question is, Gallagher did look at comps, right?
Oh, definitely.
This isn't like, that is what I want out in the public, that Gallagher came up with this because they used comparables with job descriptions, including private sector in this area. I mean, again, you can't look at other places, and I want to pay our people well, and we have to remember we have, part of their package includes all their benefits, including health benefits, and, they have a pretty good retirement system, and I know that a lot of people, younger people, that's not important to them, but it may be someday, but that's quite a bit going into that. And I just need, the taxpayers, this is all levy funded, and the taxpayers, believe me, I'm in the private sector, are not making a lot, this type of money either. I mean, I want to pay people well, but there is a limit of how much can come out of the levy to pay people and there gets to be a little bit of a pinch point by people thinking, I've gotten the calls of that, I don't make this type of money, how you expect me to try to pay the taxes? So we have to look at this holistically, and when that was the whole idea of paying this money for Gallagher, to get somebody that does this outside of the emotions of it. And that's what I hoped we came back with, is a percentage that came out of the emotions of that I want to be paid more, and I know Joe down the street makes more. That's why we have these type of wage studies. And I guess I just want to caution people from throwing it away and saying it's not accurate. I assume it is, and I will look at my HR director for his, what he feels about the Gallagher and if that's accurate. But I guess I don't want to, every time we have a wage study, the first thing we try to do is throw it away. And then I don't want to have to try to explain to residents why we're paying money for wage studies and we come back and say they're no good. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think just to kind of add to that, we are looking at the, looking at the recommendations of 3% is actually not that bad, considering that for the last 3 years since post-COVID, we've been working hard in order to align our employees' wages, our non-represented employees' wages with market conditions, including faster steps for those below midpoint and more steps after midpoint, so that less people hit the brick wall, red line. So it could have been, if we hadn't done some of those proactive things 2-3 years ago, I think we would have been, definitely been looking at a 6-7% in a market adjustment here. So we generally, this is if it's only a 3% adjustment, to me it kind of bodes well, and it, like you said, this is, unlike private corporations, we're not flush with profits. Anything we do is dependent on the levy, and we have to speak to our constituents about that. So we have to keep that in mind, that we are good stewards of the resources that we have.
Just to finish, I don't mean to throw it away, but I'm just saying that it was a year ago that we initiated the wage study, knowing that there was a need for a fresh look at our salaries and our wages, and that's why I'm just saying that it's been a year that the employees have been basically waiting for some kind of an adjustment. Of course, I will stand with the 3%, but it's just the fact that now most likely this won't get wrapped into the 2024 budget, and it's been a year and a half now that eventually that our employees have been looking for this kind of boost, and that's why I said what I said. But I will stand with the committee. I will stand with the Gallagher. But I'm just saying that they've been waiting for this adjustment a year now, and now they will be waiting a year and a half. And I think we could have done better with them, but so be it.
I can't really speak to that because I've only been here 10 months, or 9 months. So If that's the case, I apologize, even though I wasn't here. But I mean, all I can deal with is the present and the future. I can't do anything about the past.
Any other questions, concerns, discussion? Otherwise, I take a motion. We can decide it. Motion by Herbst, second by Martins. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Okay. Discussion and possible action approving incentive pay for Wausau Waterworks utility.
Afternoon. So what staff has been working on is a pay structure to incentivize employees at the utility to get their certifications, right? So the DNR regulates both the water and the wastewater. PSC is also a regulatory of the water. And so under those, there's certifications that we want employees to have. And there are certain positions that need those in order to be an operator in charge of the facility. And right now, we only have one on each side, one OIC operator in charge at water and one at wastewater. And so if that individual either leaves or, is on extended leave for any reason, we don't have anybody in accordance with DNR regulations to fill that position. So and without incentives, employees, don't really have a drive because there's no pay incentives, there's no monetary reason for them to get certified. Our job descriptions right now have been reduced to basically a high school diploma, and we hope that you can get your CDL within a year and a half. And that's the only way that we're getting people in the door to interview. So, so for, like, Gallagher looks at those job descriptions, right? I understand why they classified those the way they are. They're not appropriate because we need skills, but we have to get people in the door so we can fill positions, and then we have to develop them. And one way to develop them is through incentive pay. As they earn these certifications, they will receive the certification pay, and as they maintain them, they will continue. If they fall away and don't maintain those certifications through continuing education, then they will no longer receive that certification pay.
Go ahead, Tom.
I think I'll have several questions, but the first one is I had the opportunity to watch the video of the latest Water Commission meeting, and there was discussion about different studies. One, obviously, the Gallagher study from this committee. I believe you had brought up another study, and when was that done, Mr. Lindman?
That was done in 2022. It was a staffing assessment study, and as part of that, they also looked at wages as well.
And what was the sequence of kind of procurement and approval for that study?
It went through the Utility Commission, budget approval, and RFP, yeah.
And do you remember the cost of the study?
I don't know. Scott, do you remember what that was? $40,000.
$40,000.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all for now.
Okay. Any other questions about? Go ahead. Dawn first. Sorry.
We're using incentive pay in other departments, aren't we? Doesn't
We are
the Public
for-
Works use that for something?
For the mechanics,
For the
yes.
mechanics, yes.
Yes. And so they've grouped their certifications as well, whether to work on fire and safety equipment, to do different things, and they have a dollar amount, per section that they get, that they receive too.
And that plan is working well in retaining mechanics or getting them to progress through the system?
Yeah, I think it's an incentive for them to continue on with their skills, which as an employer, definitely helps us, especially with all the different types of equipment that we have. Yeah.
Okay, so it'd be a benefit in the water, in the utility too, to have the same type of program.
Yeah, because we really do need skilled labor. I mean, when our staff is on site, they're digging in trenches, they're pipe fitting, they're doing breaks, they need to understand pressures in a system for safety controls. Obviously, when we have main breaks, it's a public health issue, people out of water. And so all of our specifications, everything that we do not allow people to be out of water for more than 4 hours. If it's something more catastrophic, we have to have, contingencies in place for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think the water department knows how I feel about this. I'm in favor of the fact that you're going to go ahead and have this training and order these and have these incentives for the people to come on board, and with these incentives to continue to go on to move up to different levels. And with the additional money that they can earn doing this, I think this is absolutely wonderful. Why hasn't this been done earlier?
Yeah.
Too busy, no time, most of the case.
I agree. It's late, Don.
But I
Yeah,
appreciate the fact that whoever put this all together did a fantastic job. I'm looking at the water and the wastewater, and whatever it takes to get these people on board, we need them like now, not 2 days ago, we need them now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So my follow-up questions, I'll go back to the video because it was discussed probably more at length during that than we have this evening. So, in the video, there were topics that were brought up. One of them was certification. And there was discussion about, the city already paying for that training for the certification. And also, if I recall, there were questions about comparable certain cities like Appleton and Oshkosh. And I believe questions were raised about kind of the logic or challenge in using comparables of employees that were already certified versus those who were not. And
Sure.
That's kind of my recollection of the public access video. And all of those topics seemed, I guess, to be significant with this type of discussion. And perhaps there can be some more related information given tonight, so I'm not just gleaning from public access video, but when I heard the exchange between you and Mr. Henderson about these topics, his perspective, as I watched it, seemed to be very objective and logical to me, and into not making kind of false comparisons between certified and uncertified, or also using cities that apparently were not comparable in relevant ways to Wausau. So I guess since I couldn't talk to you through my computer screen while I was watching that video, I guess what today then is your what is your response or commentary on those topics, Mr. Lindman?
Well, specific to comparables, like Gallagher has used counties, as part of their comparables. Well, counties don't have water and sewer utilities, so that's, in our opinion, is not a comparable. Other cities that they were using have a lot less sophisticated facilities than we do. Some are smaller. And so, you have municipalities that are being used that all they have is wells and a few pump houses. We obviously have wells. We have a full water treatment facility with primary and tertiary treatment. It's a surface water plant now, basically. So I think the complexities of a utility, and when we do comparables with other municipalities, we need to make sure that they are maintaining and operating the same types of facilities that we are. They need to be true comparables. I don't know how Gallagher chose those. I know that the utility was never brought in as far as when they were using comparables with the utility. And so so that's part of the utility. That's part of my frustration. We're trying to maintain a healthy utility right now, and the utility is not healthy when it comes to our skilled labor force. We're losing a lot of senior people. We've lost some to these neighboring communities, Oshkosh and others, and for monetary reasons. And so, and when I look at comparables, both nationally with comp surveys, with comparable cities as ours, along with job descriptions and responsibilities that our staff has, you'll see the disparities in the memo I put together. But when it comes to the incentive pay, just like the mechanics, like when we bring people on, if we're going to continue to bring people on at a very basic level and not increase our job descriptions and ask for skilled labor, then some way we need to bring them on. We need to show them that it's important for us because we need that skilled labor in order to properly maintain the utility. And we need to pay them for those skills that they earn. And so that's why this is in front of us right now. And that's the only way we're going to continue to maintain an employee workforce.
Thank you for that
Yep.
response. So, Mr. Henderson?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on some of that, and I hate it because I'd really want to save most of my thunder for 7 because I think that's where most of my heartburn relies in point 7. I don't really have a problem with the incentives, but just a few things. Number one, when I looked at that Baker-Tilly assessment, it compared to, if I hope I'm pronouncing, because my Wisconsin pronunciation is not always on point, Manitowoc.
Manitowoc.
Okay. Manitowoc, yeah. And it had Oak Creek, which is 3 hours away, which is a wealthy suburb of Milwaukee. Had Appleton, which is right up above Green Bay, so they share a huge recruiting base with Green Bay. And then the other one was Oshkosh. Don't know much about Oshkosh other than the baby clothing. I think the Oshkosh bagosh, but I just kind of go back on that a little bit. And another thing I wanted to address is we're losing people to more pay. And I was told on that one with Oshkosh, even though the person left for more pay, but they also left because they got married. And then they just happened to have a job with more pay. So I think that's kind of, and I had my, again, I hate to steal thunder from 7, but I keep hearing about how, they're just bleeding and they're losing people. From so far this year, they've lost 6 people. And I'm just going to read off one was to death, one resigned, and the death was in May. Then in June, they lost one that resigned in lieu of termination. In July, they lost one. The person left and came back. Then in, looks like in June or whatever, they had one that just medical reasons or whatever couldn't keep doing the position. And then in July, retirement. And then in last month, they had one they lost in lieu of termination. So those are very natural issues that every department deals with, and none of those were tied to pay. So again, and I know this is probably better going to be waiting till we get to the one about the reorg and the reclassification, but I just kind of want to put that out there because that's one thing I've heard is, we're just hemorrhaging, we're just losing people, we're losing people, and they've lost 6 people so far this year. So. And and they're pretty natural causes. They're not because I found a job that my job is, I'm not making as much money, so I'm just leaving. They're very, very natural causes. So I just want to make sure that we got all the information on this.
Thank you both for that information, and perhaps at a later agenda item, I'll speak more about my thoughts on, I think obviously we're here as a human resource policy making body, but those resources don't go very far without the financial resources behind the human resources. And I think what we're seeing time and time again is in Wausau, we have a structural issue with problematic dynamics between utility and the city. And it's sometimes there's a desire for kind of full sovereignty, and sometimes when it's beneficial, then there appears to be more interplay one way or another. But perhaps as we move down later on to further agenda items, I will touch more upon that, because I think we've hit a critical point or topic where we can see that the finances at play when we're talking about the utility in the city are greatly impacting the human resources dynamics as well. So for the sake of brevity, I'll just wait till a later agenda item. Thank you.
I'm just sitting here, I read the packet not only once, but I read it twice, and my feelings are, we built a brand-new water department. We made a whole bunch of improvements for the wastewater department. In doing so, I'm sure that we had to add more employees because of the expanse of some of these facilities. What I don't understand is why we cannot get the people that we need to run these operations. And as Eric alluded to, if the main man, so to speak, something happens, heaven forbid, we don't want that, who's the next person to step up? There is not a person then that is qualified or has not the opportunity, but they're not qualified to step in and take the position over. And that's my big thing, is I just don't understand why we're not doing more for this brand-new water facility and this wastewater when we've spent all the money and we don't have enough employees to run these facilities, much less the employees we do have. By golly, they're overworked and then some. And then I read that some of these, and I am not sure, maybe it's the water department, that they don't even have phones. They have to use their personal phones to make contacts or whatever when they're called to be on duty. And I just look at these things and say, why aren't these being done? Yes, I know money is an issue. We don't have a tree in the backyard. But by golly, every time one of the other big departments asks for something, bang, they get it. And it just seems now we're just sitting standstill and nobody wants to do anything for these two utilities. And it's bothering the heck out of me. Thank you.
Any more comments on the incentives?
So,
Go ahead.
so Mr. Henderson, citywide, with regard to incentive pay, is this something in the finance department and, in some of the more specialties? In assessment, I think that, I'm not sure, I think that there is a certification necessary for property assessment. I think this is sort of a common thing throughout the city, as I recall. I think there's and I would think that as we move forward, is there a shortage of certified people throughout the city? I understand Mr. Lindman's predicament, and I think we have to address it, but I'm more concerned about the citywide aspect of incentive pay to bring people up to certified status. Do we do that in other departments?
Well, as I mentioned, there are like maintenance positions to where there are certain certifications that they have. And again, the issue with that has been just a couple of people, they really don't want to maintain those, and then you have to go back and take that. But again, that's pretty common to have incentive pay when it comes to these type of operators.
So you would agree then with the motion, with the proposal in front of us?
Oh, I agree with the certification pay. It's just, yeah, I agree with the certification pay, yes. Because with that, you're, as Eric mentioned, you're incentivizing people to try to do better. And I think when I look at it, I think those incentives went up to, was it maybe $1.50 an hour or something like that. I mean, that's not uncommon for utility type positions, but my only concern, and I think that they answered that in there, is that these are real certifications, because I know a lot of times you can go in a weekend. I know, like in building trades, I know a lot of times you can go and get a certification in a weekend, but I don't think this is that. I don't think this is the issue there. Right. And I think that's a very, very credible situation.
about, there's no fiscal impact, with regard to Mr. Killian's point, there's no fiscal impact as yet. Do we know that?
Well, I think one thing is we're not going to know who's going to partake, because just because it's there doesn't mean that they'll partake of it. So
Right,
we
I
have no
understand.
idea of knowing who's going to do it and who's
Right,
not.
Okay, but we should put something, I would think something would land in the budget with regard to the prospect that something like this will happen.
Right. The incentives, yes. And
Okay.
again, that's something that I support. I think that that is a good situation to incentivize people to get certifications.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this? Otherwise, I'll take a motion if somebody wants to give one. Okay, I have a motion by Gissam and a second by Mertens. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We're now on number 6, discussion of possible action approving 3 new positions at Wausau Waterworks beginning in 2024.
So we, again, getting back to the study, the staffing assessment study that we had done, there were several positions that the study recommended, both on the water and wastewater side. In 2024, we are proposing 2 positions on the wastewater side and 1 on the water side. Our proposal is to step these in over the course of 3 to 4 years, just simply because bringing on new people is going to have a pretty heavy burden on training. And so trying to bring them all on at one time. We also have to be responsible with the budgets as well. And so when we bring people on, we want to make sure that we provide them enough time to bring them on properly and to train them properly and to become a little bit more independent before in 2025 budget, before we look at the next set of staff that we would be bringing on. It's a little bit complicated too with the new water treatment plant on the water side. That's why we're bringing 1 in on the water side. Operations of that is new to us this year. And again, will be next year with the new GAC process going online next year. So.
Go ahead, Gary.
A question, this was approved by I trust it was passed by the Water Commission?
It was not. They asked that this come to the HR committee for a review and a recommendation. It will go back to the Utility Commission in October.
Can I ask why they didn't? Or was that with regard to the larger issue,
These were kind of tied together with the mayor.
with regard to the larger issues on the next item on the agenda?
Yeah, I thought that it was important that we are aligned as the council and the utility commission in these issues. So I wanted to make sure this committee had this discussion because I know that you're all taking calls about water rates and taxes. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. That's why we pushed it to you guys.
Well, I have a sense if Mr. Lindman feels the need, for specifically with regard to the need for more I know it's hard to talk finances and budgets, but I think we have to speak to the needs of the water utility, and I would think that. I guess I need to hear from the rest of the committee, but I feel that if Mr. Lindman needs the staff to run, I think that is entirely appropriate, but that's how I feel.
I just feel that we need to approve what Eric Lindman is asking for from the committee.
I need to know fiscal impact. Do we have that?
They do. On the water side, for 2024, it's about $110,000. On the wastewater side, it would be $182,000.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
we always refer to Mary Ann Grote to find a way to get the money, so I guess I'm going to look back at Mary Ann and say,
I
I
would
hope,
think this is, though, isn't this utility, you guys?
oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah, you're right.
Bring
utility,
it back
so,
to the
you're right.
commission, but
You're
this
right.
was
Thank you.
discussed during the rate case.
Yep.
Yep.
was it part of the 65%?
Yeah, I'd actually have to look and see what it was. I know the Baker Tilly study was evaluated with Ellers coming forward, but we'll get that information
Yeah.
to the commission and verification.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, I agree with, moves to if, needs have been identified for more workers or resources, that those needs are satisfied. What I hear coming up at this meeting on multiple occasions, and I had brought it up not long ago, was the intersection with finances. And I think, save more commentary for the next item, but it feels like at some point it may be worthwhile, useful, and appropriate to perhaps have some joint meetings of some sort that rope in finance and maybe the Water Commission as well, because I think all of these parts are, there's an interplay between them. And when we talk about rate increases, so, just very tough for citizens right now. But I believe that improvements and responsible financial decisions are not mutually exclusive when it comes to water and the Water Commission. I'll just give you one big example, the pilot from the utility to the city. I think the last time I spoke with Ms. Grote about possibilities on adjusting the pilot, I believe what I proposed, Ms. Grote had told me, I don't know if it was Ayler she bounced it off of, but right there, just with that proposal with modifying the pilot payment, you shave 20 points off the increase pretty much right away. And I think the counter argument from some in the city was, hey, we may want to use that money that we're anticipating to get from the pilot. Well, I think we're learning tonight, once again, it's time to revisit that pilot. That pilot shouldn't be flying anymore, at least not for numerous years at the level it is. And so I will underscore why this is germane to this committee, because if we can make appropriate, responsible financial decisions, and the pilot is one of them, it is going to free up some monies without crushing the ratepayer further. So we can discuss this more next item, but I think there is a happy medium here, or there is a way that needs are identified and then satisfied, and we don't have to go into any further of a financial spiral in terms of human resources with water if we revisit things like that pilot payment. So I do support more human resources, but I think we need a strategic and sane way of addressing our rates, and especially with finances, that pilot. I think it's just doing tremendous damage in that regard. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other comments or questions? We didn't get a motion. Good. Okay, we have a motion by,
Motion to approve 3.
okay,
Second.
okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Okay, sorry. Okay, we're on to discussion and possible action approving organizational changes and reclassifications for Wausau Water Works.
So I'll go back a little ways. So for 3 to 4 years now, the utility has been trying to figure out how to reorganize to the best way it can within the pay structure that was approved by council, developed by Gallagher. Continuously, as we look at the pay grades, the responsibilities our staff has at the utility, both water and wastewater, and actual comparables for other utilities, and even looking at comp studies through organizations like American Water Works and others, Rural Water. Our staff, our positions are significantly under those, and you'll see that in your packet as well. So we came up with a new organizational chart, which adds in the positions based on the Baker-Tilly study. But it also reorganizes in a way to some of our labor force, right? To classify them to where they come on as maybe an operator one, and or distribution maintainer or collection system technician as a one. As they earn skills, as they develop competencies, then they move on to a number two, right? So they go from one to a two. That's one of the changes as well. And, you know, that's progression, right? As you earn skills, as you're able to do the work, and as you're able to be more independent in the labor force, that's important. And that's a great way for us to help retain those employees as well. And it also makes them accountable because they have to earn those competencies, and they also have to prove that they have the ability to do that. And so those are some of the classifications. So when we talked about other classifications, we're talking about responsibilities from the operations superintendent, from the supervisors, those responsibilities that they have to make decisions independently. Those are reasons that those individuals should be reclassified to a higher pay grade. Right now, based on how reclassifications are happening, the schedule that you see right now is if somebody's in a, let's just say a pay grade 15, and we want to go to the next pay grade, right? And they're making $20 an hour, and let's say they're like step 10. We would keep them at step 10 in the next pay grade, right? So they wouldn't step back. So that's where you're seeing what those differences are with that pay, that hourly pay. And so that's where the budget impacts are coming into play, and what you're seeing for each of these reclassifications in these individuals. Some of these positions have multiple people in the positions, and so you'll see, you know, we've accommodated to make sure that everybody that gets advanced, and these are conservative estimates as well, so.
Oh, yeah, I've got a bunch of questions on this one. First of all, I want to know what kind of science was used other than, hey, I want my guy to make more money.
Yeah, we used comparables. We used
From Baker-Tilly.
Well, from, as I said, American Water Works Associated, Wisconsin Rural Water.
Which is national, not local.
Wisconsin Rural Water is local. We
Right.
used the other local municipalities, so we tried to balance what we used nationally as well as what we used locally, right?
So I want to give you just one example of why I feel that this is a horrible idea. One of the first one was taking the superintendents from grade 12 to grade 10. Okay, so the superintendents are going to bypass the police captain and the battalion chiefs. They're going to end up in step 10 with the city assessor and the assistant director of community development. One's going to get a raise of $13,000 a year. The other's going to get a raise of $12,000. Okay, so keep this in mind also. Once they go to step 10, then they're going to get that $12,000 or $13,000 raise. They're going to get their step. They're going to get this 3%, the increase that we're going to have that Gallagher recommended. So they're going to get both studies. Then they're going to get a cost of living raise on top of that. How is it fair when I look down through there, each person's getting at least probably a 10 or 12% raise. how is it fair to say that we're going to raise them 10 or 12% and then go to the rest of the city and say, guys, you may get 3%?
Well, I think that the other option is, James, is that what we could do is we could say, put these people in the classifications, right? We go from a 15 to the next pay grade up. And then we just take, rather than keeping them in that same step, we drop them back a step. If the fiscal impact is really the issue, then we just drop them back to the next closest step that they're at by a fraction that reduces the budget impact going into 2024, but it actually puts people in a classification where they should be.
But what I
based
don't-
on their responsibilities.
What I don't want is I don't want people to get the wrong idea of what a reclassification is, because a reclassification is when, because, you know, and I can read it right from the employee handbook. As the organization continues to grow, jobs and responsibilities will evolve and change over time. And all I've seen is, hey, we just want more money. It's not that these jobs have, you know, as you get a newer plant, to me, you should have fewer workers because you should have more technology.
That's absolutely not the case, James.
I just, you know,
That's your opinion, but
well,
that's wrong.
again, if you're going to have more technology, you should
Right.
be able to have a more focused and a more efficient workforce, or why would you spend the money to get the new plant anyway? But that's a whole different, that's a red herring.
Right.
That's not what I'm wanting to talk about. But what I'm saying is that a reclassification should have science behind it. It should be, it should have, and even though it's to a degree subjective, it's always going to have a degree of subjectivity to it. But you should be able to say, just like the one we talked about earlier, this person is taking on more responsibilities than they did. You know, when we first did this, there was no online payments, there was no this, but now that there is, their job is more complicated, so they need to be in a higher pay thing. So, but what I'm seeing is that, and when I looked at it, it was the entire department.
It's a reorganization.
The entire department. And to me, I just have a hard time with doing that. This is a $500,000 investment just for that, and that's not even talking about the 3 positions that we just added, which is another $200,000 or $300,000. So we're about to drop $1 million at conservatively with something that there's really no science behind. It's just basically someone saying that my people deserve more money. That's my issue.
It's about a total of $450,000, if this is the way that you do it. But I can tell you, when we looked at the AWWA nationally, and their responsibilities from operations superintendent all the way down, basically, we're not even close.
But whenever you say now, you know, I could show you some job descriptions right now that pay HR directors $200,000 a year.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that I'm going to go get one of
But
those jobs and
but
then the
those-
city's not going to match
But
it.
also what I'm looking at, James, is our responsibilities, based on those responsibilities and job descriptions from the American Water Works Association. We're always asked to go to our associations for assistance on these things, and we did. And not only did we do that, but we came back and did it locally. Wisconsin Rural Water, those are our small systems. We looked at those, right? We looked at some other comparables, actual comparables within the state. Even if you look at some of the comparables that Gallagher did, you can put those in the mix, and we're still going to be low. You can put all those together, and we're still going to be low. And that's what I'm bringing to your attention. And right now, our utility is at a critical juncture, right? And it has been since the implementation of the last wage study in 2019. And we will continue to have issues. And our next issues are going to be non-compliance. And they're going to be expensive. And they are going to have an issue with us coming back into compliance without skilled labor and without us being able to retain and without us being able to draw people in. So, you know, I haven't been getting assistance on putting this together. Gallagher has never come and talked to us.
Well, but didn't they ask for, when we did that study, and we asked all the directors to look at these job
You gave me
descriptions?
2 weeks' notice to go through 40-some job descriptions. And so, no, I wasn't able to do it. And I responded appropriately on that, too. So if you want to do this, you know, however you want to do it, this is what we came up with that we feel would address the issues that we're having at the utility from a monetary standpoint and classifications.
Well, it may address it for the utilities, but what does it do for the rest of the city? And see, that's my viewpoint. And I tell directors all the time, that's the difference in our viewpoint. All you're worried about is your department. You want to go back and tell hey, I fought and I got you money. My worry and my responsibility is for the entire city. And like I said, with one group's getting 20% raise and another's getting 3%.
As I said before, I'm concerned about the classifications, right? And the longevity of the positions. When we hired a wastewater superintendent, right? In order to get somebody that was able to walk through the door, have the qualifications and step in, we put them at the top of the pay scale because that's where we had to be. That tells me that that job is not properly classified because that midpoint, which is supposed to be market, is significantly low. Because there's no way we would have been able to bring anybody in with any sort of skills and experience for that amount of money. And we tried. So these are some of the issues that we're running at with the utility. And I'm asking for a consideration on looking at this. If you want me to do something different, if you want me to bring more information back, if you want me to meet with Gallagher and work, I'm absolutely willing to do it. But I don't want to just sit back and potentially have failures at the utility, especially when we put $130 million into them over the last couple of years, and we're about to put another 20-some million into the water plant. And so, the Utility Commission, I've done everything. They've asked me to come here. If you'd like to see more information, if you'd like to have me do more work, I'm happy to do it. I just don't know what else to do. But I can tell you that right now, the utility is, we're definitely not a healthy utility when it comes to our workforce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess, given the importance and urgency I'm hearing, I think it might be useful if the city entertained having some more broad meetings with joint meetings with various relevant bodies, because I feel like this is only a symptom of kind of a larger problem, and that problem has for a long time been the distinctions and the dynamics with the utility and the city, and at times it feels like, trying to put a size 8 shoe on a size 10 foot. It just doesn't fit with the current structural layout, and I think we again need to look at these from a multifaceted approach. Part of the problem with human resources is financial resources, so maybe at the same time we look at these things, we need to look at the financial component as well, and maybe in the long term we realize that, hey, the system as structured just hasn't worked out as we'd hoped, and it's time to revisit and conceptualize something new. And if that's urgent, if these things are urgent and important, then let's do that rapidly. So that would be my informal request. Now at this meeting, I'll make a more formal request to do that in the near future then. But I agree with Mr. Henderson's position on this and perspective as these things were laid out, not just here tonight, but in the video. So I would not support this evening. And if these things are so urgent or important, I think we need to call the relevant meetings to start having deep discussions about the dynamics between the utility and the city, because I think this has become highly problematic, and we can't really address many of these human resources issues until we address the long-standing financial issues at play with the way things are structured. So I think until we have a better handle on the overall situation, I will not be supporting this evening. Thank you.
Can I have some clarification, Tom? What meetings, what bodies would you like to meet?
Sure. So I'd like to, on the financial side, at least have joint meetings with Finance and the Water Commission. I'd like to see presented by finance staff what reforming the current pilot payment to the city, what impact in various forms and iterations, what the associated impacts would be on the ratepayers. Like I said, when I had brought this up to Ms. Grote perhaps 6 months ago, and I think she had spoke with some consultants, the proposal I had put on the table immediately shaved off 20 points of a 65% increase. We should be looking at that. That gives us some more flexibility on the human resources side. But also, I would be open to your and my colleagues' input on this. It hasn't just been financial interplay. There's been questions and confusion about the sovereignty of decision-making and who does what. I had to pull teeth, it felt like, going through the commission just to get pictures so my constituents weren't drinking contaminated water. Yet the city was using, if I'm not mistaken, its ARPA money toward elements that were commission related. So which is it? The commission wants to make decisions on its own and use the city's money, or it doesn't. I think we need to figure this out. The structure has ceased to work ideally. So I think definitely finance and water commission, but I don't know if it's a committee of the whole in the commission. I think we need to revisit kind of the structure and see if there's a better way of doing things. Thank you.
Yes, well, I'm open. I think this is a discussion that we need to have. I'm certainly open to Mr. Lindman's proposal. I think we have to look, and I think we just have to take a look at I guess I'm agreeing that we have to take a look at the larger. So what's going on with the rest of the city? I know that we had a quick wage increase, with regard from last year, a quick wage survey. But do we really need again to take a look at where we are citywide? Watching the water video, I guess there was no, how do I want to say it, no consensus from the Water Commission with regard to how to proceed. Coming back here, maybe looking at the HR for the larger picture, maybe. I'm not quite sure where the Water Commission was going with that. But I think the mayor also realizes that it is a larger issue, but I certainly am open. I think if it starts with the Water Commission and with the water utility, so be it. But I think we have to put ourselves right with our employees and making sure the systems work and work right. And I guess my bottom line is I'm open to further studies, Mr. Killian's suggestion with the Water Commission or wherever, but I think that this is a large issue. Mr. Lindman, on a variety, how many months on the Water Commission you've looked at the Water Commission to look at the wages, look at the situation that was happening? Well, here we are. So now I think it's up to us, HR, to start to put the pieces together. And I think that the Water Commission and the water utility has presented it. I think we can't run from it. I think we have to be aware that things like what the situation is. I'm not sure if the mayor has, I think there's some plans maybe coming out of the Water Commission with regard to how to proceed. But I would agree with Mr. Killian, maybe a joint meeting with the Water Commission and the larger, and I would like to know where this is going to be placed with regard to the next complete citywide wage survey that we are anticipating, I'm sure.
5 years.
Because I think it all has to fit together.
Well, I agree. We're going to have to, I can't vote on anything that I don't know a fiscal impact, which includes a ratepayer. If we're going to be through HR and we know the fiscal impact's going to be 450 to 500,000, what does that equal to rates? If we're telling our ratepayers they have to pay, I can't imagine that. This is coming, I mean, is Mary Ann still there? Mary Ann, I just have a question. If this happens to go through, whenever it does, or if the Water Commission decides to unilaterally say, yes, we have the authority, we're going to do that, this would be a ratepayer increase, correct?
If it wasn't included in the previous submission. So I think the question is, was it included in the submission that took place in 2022? So I did send an email to Ellers, who did the rate increase for us, to see if they could respond. I didn't get a response from them yet. And in their presentation documentation, it doesn't really show from a salary standpoint whether they included those additional positions. So I feel reluctant to say one way or the other, because I really can't recall whether they did include them or not.
So is that just the positions or this organizational change with the 450,000 impact?
Yeah, I don't believe that was included.
Okay. So I think there's, usually when we look at something, we look at fiscal impact, which would be rate, it would be rate, right?
Yes, and we can certainly, put that together relatively quickly of what the impact would be. And to Mr. Killian's point, give you some options, because, we do have, I definitely want to balance the pros and cons of a rate increase versus that pilot. So we froze the pilot. That was what we did. Excuse me. And we do have a lot of big expenses coming down the line. On the city side, too, we have the 12 firefighters that really are unfunded. We have the community person, the homeless person. Yeah, community outreach person. We have the Public Works facility. So we've got some big bills coming down the road. And so to give up the pilot, I think, we need to look at this in a holistic approach, looking at some of these expenses that we have coming down the line, as well as what the impact to the utility is. And we can put together a presentation that looks at all of that.
Thank you for that information. Was I correct when I
Yeah, you were.
provided the
Yep.
summary that what I
Yes.
had proposed would take 20 points off the, thank
Yes.
you. And then in response to some of the information you just provided, I think, we've got new positions that perhaps were initially funded with novel funding sources, but moving forward, we will need to have funds
Yes.
on hand. And, that sounds reasonable. We're the government. We need government employees. And I would argue, from my perspective, some of the other spending is not reasonable. That's just my opinion. But I guess what I'd like to see would be the different possibilities with the pilot in the future, specifically with what you mentioned. So what is the bare minimum of a pilot payment that would cover what you were anticipating to apply toward legitimate costs, like those employees?
Sure.
Other things, I mean, we can tighten our belt perhaps, but I think on that I'd be interested in seeing what it would cover that. And then furthermore, once the financial information is provided to policymakers,
Yep.
then once the options and information is provided to policymakers, then maybe they could make the policies. But I think the start would be getting the relevant information.
Yep. And last year, when we looked at the pilot, I did do a pretty broad survey of a variety of communities that were our size and larger, to see what kind of concessions they were making on the pilot. And I think that again, I'm just going off my recollection. The largest one was the city of Milwaukee, which may have been $1 million of a discount, basically, on the pilot. But, Milwaukee is huge compared to us, too. So you don't see many municipalities taking big discounts on the pilot. So, but we did talk about that as well.
Go ahead, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to ask the mayor, because I think including the water commission, I think you had some perspective on how you may want to, how, at least specifically with regard to the water commission, on how you wanted to proceed here.
No, I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. However we proceed with that, I'm good with. If it means getting in the room, if it means attending each other's meetings and noticing that attendance, that's fine too. But that's what I'm thinking.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So what is the consensus of the committee? How would they like to proceed on this item?
Well, I think we have to start somewhere. I guess to get a larger sense of the water commission, maybe, I think that was a joint meeting of this committee and the water commission to let them hear our perspectives with regard to that, and this committee to hear, in addition to what Mr. Lindman said today, the perspectives of the water commission, because I'm sure that they are also hearing with regard to fiscal issues that are coming with water bills, and I'm sure that they are also aware of the situations with regard to the finances of the water commission and the water utilities. So maybe that would be the place to start.
Okay. Is that a consensus?
It's a consensus.
Okay, so be it. I think we didn't take a motion, and Ann's not here. I'll take a motion to table this pending a joint meeting. Would that satisfy you?
That would satisfy me.
All right.
I think we just have to be able to move on. I think we owe the water utility some movement, and maybe the first step is the joint meeting. So, but I think we've been presented with enough information, and Mr. Lindman's observations, beyond even back further than this evening, so that I think we have an obligation with the Water Commission to act. Thank you.
Okay, so was that a motion to table until a joint meeting can be scheduled?
Yes.
Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's where it is. Okay.
Thank you for the discussion.
We're up to adjournment. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn? Okay, we have Herbst, second. Thank you. Mr. Killian, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.